The story begins by introducing John May, a quiet, middle-aged man who lives a very simple life. He always dresses neatly in a clean suit, and everything about him feels orderly. His days follow the same routine, almost without variation. Every evening he returns to his small, silent flat, prepares the same modest dinner, and sits alone at the table. No family, no friends, just him. John works for the local council, but his job is unlike anyone else's. He is responsible for handling the deaths of people who pass away alone, especially those with no relatives or friends to claim them. For John, this is not just employment. It is something deeply human, almost a personal mission. Whenever a case comes in, John visits the deceased person's home. He carefully searches the room, hoping to find any trace of family, maybe a letter, an address, or something that connects them to someone. He gathers personal belongings too. Old photographs, small objects, anything that hints at who they once were. No one asks him to go that far, but he does it anyway, patiently and respectfully. He tries his best to track down relatives or old friends, just so the person will not be buried completely alone. Back at the office, he writes detailed notes and pieces together the story of a life he never witnessed. If he cannot find anyone, he writes a short obituary himself, respectful and thoughtful, so the priest has something meaningful to read at the funeral. He wants each person to be remembered, even if only for a few sentences. Almost every funeral he arranges is empty. No mourners, no family. Just John standing there, offering a quiet prayer. Sometimes he reads the farewell himself beside the grave. It is always silent, but he carries out the duty with sincerity. His supervisor often pushes for cremation instead of full funerals, arguing that it is faster and cheaper. But John believes that every person, no matter how troubled their life may have been, deserves a dignified goodbye. Even so, he sometimes finds himself scattering ashes according to the wishes left behind. John's days rarely change. He wakes up in his small flat, heads to the office, and opens a new death file at his desk. His face remains calm and focused, as if this work is the most important responsibility in the world.
Mr. Radulovich. Yes.
The cases vary. An elderly man who died alone in his chair. A woman who passed away in a cramped apartment without anyone noticing. A homeless person whose life ended on the street. Every name that crosses his desk is treated with the same seriousness. When he enters the homes of the deceased, he searches carefully, not for valuables, but for traces of a life. He slips yellowed photos, old postcards, and unsent letters into envelopes. To him, these are fragments of stories worth preserving. At home, he organizes everything with care. He even keeps photographs of every person whose funeral he arranged, as if building a quiet museum of remembrance that only he visits. No one sees the results of his work. No one praises it. But John continues, day after day, honoring lives that the world has already forgotten. Even the gravedigger knows John May by now. He is the man who always shows up alone, standing quietly beside the coffin when no one else does. The contrast between John and his co-workers is striking. To them, handling the dead is just paperwork. It should be quick, simple, and efficient. No need for extra effort, no need for details. But John believes something different. To him, every life, no matter how small or troubled, deserves to end with dignity. For John, that belief is everything. This is still life. One day, he is assigned a new case. A man has been found dead in his apartment after neighbors reported a terrible smell. It appears he had been gone for weeks before anyone noticed. The man's name is Billy Stoke. As usual, John carefully gathers anything that might help him find next of kin. Old belongings, scraps of information, anything that could lead to someone who once knew Billy. After finishing at the apartment, John is called into his supervisor's office. Mr. Prichet delivers the news in a cold, formal manner. John's position is being eliminated. The government considers his methods too slow and too expensive. He spends too much time arranging funerals instead of choosing cremation. John does not argue. He does not protest. He simply listens, absorbing the reality that the work he has devoted 20 years to is about to end. For others, it may just be a job. For him, it has been his entire life. However, he is given permission to complete one final case, Billy Stoke. Knowing this will be his last assignment, John pours himself into it with even greater care. He wants to finish properly. He wants it to mean something. He begins his quiet investigation, going through the items he found in Billy's flat. Faded photographs, old letters, worn pieces of paper with addresses scribbled on them. Each item feels like a faint trail leading into Billy's past. Following clues from the photos, John travels outside the city to visit places Billy once frequented before moving to London. He stops by an old bar Billy used to visit. He goes to a former workplace, a bakery factory where Billy had once been employed before being fired. There, John meets a former co-worker named Shakthi. From him, John learns that Billy lost his job after a shocking act of misconduct that made him impossible to defend. When invited to attend the funeral, Shakthi refuses. Through this encounter, John begins to see a clearer picture of Billy, a troubled man who drank too much and caused problems. Someone people eventually avoided, but also a man who once had friends, a youth, even love. Still, John refuses to give up. He continues asking around, going from shop to shop, hoping someone might remember Billy. Eventually, his search leads him to a woman named Mary. Mary turns out to be Billy's former partner. She is now married and has moved on with her life. From what John learns, Billy had a violent side. At one point, he seriously hurt someone during a conflict connected to Mary. It left scars that never fully healed. In fact, she admits that part of her feels relief knowing he is gone. Then John hears something unexpected. When Billy left, Mary had been pregnant with his child. Billy never knew. That revelation shakes him. John gently asks Mary to consider attending the funeral, perhaps even bringing her children. But she wants no connection to Billy anymore. A few days later, Mr. Presche calls John in again. He reminds him that his time is almost up. In his view, Billy Stoke should simply be cremated and the file closed. The dead, he suggests, do not require this much attention. But John quietly asks for more time. He wants to finish what he started. That afternoon, John contacts the police station where Billy once served time. When a phone call does not give him enough answers, he goes there in person. Unfortunately, the case is 17 years old and the records have already been moved. The visitor logs from Billy's time in prison are no longer available. However, the prison officer tells him that older records may have been transferred to the home office. So John follows that lead. After going through official documents and paperwork, he uncovers something important. Billy had a daughter. Her name is Kelly Stoke, and there is an address attached to her file. Before approaching her, John decides to prepare carefully. He believes that the photographs of a young girl he found in Billy's old album must be Kelly. So he gathers those pictures and arranges them neatly into a small album. With the address in hand, John goes to find her. Kelly works at an animal shelter. When they meet, John gently informs her that her father has passed away. She is clearly surprised, but the shock quickly settles into distance. Kelly never had a good relationship with Billy. Her childhood was filled with disappointment, and she has long since detached herself from him. Still, John speaks to her with patience and empathy. He explains that she is Billy's last remaining family. Then he gives her the album he put together, telling her it was found clutched close to Billy when he was discovered. That detail softens something in her. The photographs clearly mean more than she expected. Kelly begins to open up about her father and why she chose to cut ties with him. Billy had been selfish as a parent. The last time she saw him was in prison. Before his release, he had wanted to fix things and start over. But Kelly's mother did not believe he would change. Their final meeting ended in a heated confrontation. Emotions ran so high that prison guards had to step in. The memory still lingers. Kelly later brings John to her home. There she shows him an old photograph of Billy with a man named Jumbo, a friend from his military days. Jumbo had once tried to find Billy, but Kelly refused to help at the time. She leaves the photo with John. Even though she is shaken by the news of her father's death, Kelly makes it clear that she cannot attend the funeral. The wounds of the past are still too deep. She thanks John for coming all this way to tell her in person. Despite her refusal, John still holds on to a quiet hope that she might change her mind. Before returning, John decides to visit Jumbo at a retirement home. To his surprise, he is welcomed warmly. Kelly has already called ahead to let Jumbo know that John would be coming. Jumbo shares stories about Billy from their time serving together on an island. He says Billy could be kind, but his drinking often caused trouble. In fact, Billy's actions eventually contributed to Jumbo ending up in the care home. Even so, they had remained friends for a long time. By the end of it all, John prepares himself for the possibility that he may once again stand alone at a funeral. Kelly will not come. Jumbo will not come. And Billy Stoke, like so many before him, may have only one person there to see him off. John goes on to choose a coffin and design a proper headstone for Billy. He even selects a burial spot with a pleasant view. As always, he handles every detail with care. Once everything is arranged, he returns to the office and begins packing up his belongings. After 20 years, his desk is finally being cleared. Then his phone rings. It is Kelly. She tells him she plans to come to London after all. Before meeting her, John stops by his flat to gather a few of Billy's personal items that he had kept safe. He also mentions that he chose a dark red headstone, the same color as Billy's old military beret. When they meet, Kelly can see how much effort John has put into honoring a man she herself had tried to forget. For the first time in a long while, John is not speaking to someone out of duty. He is simply being human. That brief meeting opens a small door for him, a possibility he has never allowed himself to imagine. Kelly suggests they sit down and talk after Billy's funeral on Friday. John agrees. As they part ways, something shifts inside him. After years of living alone, he begins to wonder what life might look like if he allowed someone in. With his final case almost complete, he starts imagining a future that feels slightly different from the one he has always known. Not long before the funeral, John decides to buy a small gift for Kelly. But as he leaves the shop, tragedy strikes. In an instant, he is hit by a bus. His life ends there on the street. John May is buried soon after. Just as he feared for so many others, his funeral is completely empty. No family, no friends, no one to mourn him. Only a priest offering a quiet prayer as he is laid to rest. At the same time, Billy's funeral takes place. This time, it is different from the ones John used to attend alone. People show up. Jumbo is there. Kelly is there. Others whose lives were once touched by Billy also come to pay their respects. For once, Billy is not alone. Kelly waits for John, expecting him to arrive. She does not know that he is already gone. Even when a hearse passes nearby, she has no idea that it carries the man who fought so hard for her father's dignity. After Billy is laid to rest, Kelly happens to witness another burial. She does not realize that it is John's grave she is looking at. She never learns in that moment who lies beneath the soil. And then, as everyone leaves, something quietly powerful happens. The spirits of those John once helped seem to gather around his grave. They stand there in silence, surrounding him with a presence that feels warm and grateful. It is as if they are reminding him that he was never truly alone, that his kindness mattered, that he is remembered. So the moral of the story is the ones who make sure no one dies alone are often the ones who leave this world with no one beside them. So never wait to show someone they matter.